Our Tuesday MPs. James Rajat is a Conservative MP from Edmonton. The Deputy Leader of the NDP is Megan Leslie of Halifax, and Roger Cuzner is here to represent all the Trudeau Liberals. Oh, well, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Look, guys, there was a lot of finger pointing in the House and wondering how this thing is spiraled out of control. James, I got to go to you first. There's a lot of people pointing fingers at your party, saying you fell down on the job with the inspection process, and yet the Prime Minister says 700 net new inspections. Who's telling the truth? Why? What's the truth here? Someone's fibbing.
Well, in fact, there are 700 more inspectors. There's 170 more meat inspectors since 2006. So people are on the job. The CFIA is on the job. Their paramount concern is public safety in terms of for consumers to ensure that the products that we have on our shelves are safe to eat. So that's what they're doing. The facility is obviously closed right now, and it will remain closed until the inspectors are assured, CFIA is assured, that we can have some safe product coming out of there. So I think CFIA has acted responsibly in this case, and the minister has worked directly with CFIA to ensure that they are acting responsibly in this case, and that's exactly, I think, what the public expects of the government and CFIA in this circumstance.
Where is your minister, by the way? This is where you put the face of the minister out and provide reassurances to Canadians that their beef's safe to eat.
He's, in fact, today he was out west, and he was, in fact, in direct contact with a lot of CFIA officials to directly monitor the situation.
All right, Megan, is the federal government culpable in this, or is it really just a failure to report from the meat packer to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency?
I think the minister is responsible here. I mean, you talked about finger pointing. The opposition stands up in question period. This is our opportunity to ask questions of government and hold them to account. That's fair process. But yesterday, we had government point fingers at CFIA and say, we're holding their feet to the fire. Pardon me? We have a minister here who's responsible. The buck stops with the minister. We want to see some accountability. They stand up and they say, 700 new inspectors. Where are they? Are they behind desks? We think they're behind desks. Are they actually inspecting? If they saw that there was a problem at this plant, something went wrong. There was a lack of communication somewhere, and we have to figure out where it was if we're going to prevent this from happening again, and that's the minister's job.
3 weeks is a long time to go from notification you got a problem to starting a major recall, isn't it?
And the government's the protection that's going on is more about protecting the minister than protecting the food safety. So there's all kinds of concerns around this, and again on this file we haven't gotten a lot of straight answers. And with regard to the 700 new inspectors, they must be like ninja inspectors because nobody can find them. We know after the last recall, which to that point would have been the largest recall in Canadian history, they laid off 140 inspectors and 90 biologists, which was fairly substantive. So, and our guys that are working on this file, in their conversations with the unions and other people in the industry, they're not seeing where these 700 jobs are.
You getting any? Go ahead, James. But I just wondering if
there are, in fact, more inspectors overall for the entire industry, and there are over 170 for the meat industry in and of itself. And both Megan and Roger asked, what are they doing? There's over 40 inspectors, in fact, in this plant to ensure that when it reopens, the public can be 100% assured that whatever product is coming out of there is safe. So that they're doing their job, they're on the ground doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, and this is what the Prime Minister pointed out in the House today.
This new legislation that's introduced in the Senate, my understanding is that only allows meat inspectors to become fish inspectors, to become other types of inspectors. I'm not sure if that improves food safety or not. Is that what it does? Am I reading it correctly?
But it also it grants the inspectors more powers. It obviously implements some of the recommendations of the Weatherall report, which you mentioned to your previous guest, and we are in fact acting on the recommendations of that report, following up on that. So I think I'd like to see the opposition support that. Our understanding is the opposition parties would be opposing the legislation. I hope that they take a serious look at it and support it. In light of these circumstances, in light of the concerns that they're raising.
Do you know if the NDP is going to support it or oppose it?
I don't know yet, and I actually haven't looked at the legislation closely, but
we'll talk about
the fear is that it's a shell game, right? The fear is if you are allowing these inspectors to go here or there, is it just a shell game? Are we just moving them around, or is it actually empowering them to do something different?
I want to stick with you, Megan, because you had, there was a motion today, or the NDP was pushing for a full inquiry into the Nexon takeover.
Yeah.
I guess I wonder, like, isn't that Investment Canada's job? Aren't they doing a good enough job to find out if this is in the national interest? Why do you have to have an inquiry?
First of all, 2 years ago, the Conservatives actually stood up in the House and supported an NDP motion to say we would have public consultations about this. It's the proper thing to do. They also stood up in the House and said we will have a better definition of what net benefit is and figure out, is this good for Canada? How does this work? We've seen no action on that whatsoever. We know Canadians are concerned about this deal. I think it's only fair to talk to them. And when I say that, I mean, you know, everyday Mr. and Mrs. Canada, everyday Canadians, but also Canadians with a degree of expertise in this, Canadians who have some quote-unquote skin in the game, who understand the nuances of this issue. I don't know why we wouldn't talk to people about it. I don't know why we wouldn't consult.
Well, on this one in particular, I sort of like Jeffrey Simpson's approach to this. He said, you know, let's look at this particular deal in reverse. If this were a Canadian company trying to go forward with a deal like this in China, would this happen? And you know that the answer to that is never. There has to be some kind of reciprocal agreement, some kind of reciprocity. You know, the net benefit, as Megan had indicated, they had talked about reviewing the act before and seeing if Canadians, obviously what's going on in the world with China and India, you know, we're a trading party and we believe in open and free trade, but there has to be benefit to Canadian companies.
James, is Investment Canada enough?
Well, if you look at the net benefit test in the Act itself, I mean, I think it's fairly explicit in terms of what conditions a deal would have to meet. Further to that, we've amended the legislation to deal with the national security provisions and also to deal with state-owned enterprises in the sense that they will have to act as commercial enterprises. I think it's fair for parliamentarians and citizens to raise all sorts of questions during this process. The minister is obviously looking at this very closely, but I think the Investment Canada Act, as it's written, I mean, it's a very explicit test which a company will have to meet if they want to.
All right, you guys are way too serious. I got to have a quick question. I have a quick question. Justin Trudeau goes in tonight. James Rajat, the Conservatives worried about this guy coming in as the Liberal leader? If that happens.
I'm a little upset that he's getting a little more attention than my friend Roger Kuzner. I think.
When are you declaring, Roger?
Roger is just as charismatic. He may have 150,000 less followers on Twitter, but those followers he has are just as committed, if not more so.
You two had draft Kuzners buttons on your lapels.
We're still working on them.
Are you guys worried that Mr. Trudeau could take away all your support in Quebec, Megan, of the New Democrat threat?
Not particularly.
You're not losing any sleep over it?
Not losing sleep.
And you're announcing when?
I'm sure that the dumpster divers over the Conservative Party are neck deep in anything they can dig up on them. The attack ads should start probably about 7:15. Listen, don't underestimate him. We went through. I sit in front of Justin, and he's a good friend. And the whole Brazeau thing, I thought he was going to get his head knocked off, but you know, he stuck to a game plan that was sort of developed around him. If he does that and he's disciplined, he's a great guy. He works hard. He's a smart guy. So they'll underestimate him at his own peril. If in fact he does, if he does end up.
I think we can put
Roger
if he decides he's going to run.
Roger and I are going to do a cage match. We should do a cage match, you and I.
I'm being told I'm out of time, so shush, okay? Roger, Megan, James, see you next week. Well, it was charitably described as a frosty encounter for 15